son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. You know, my brain is already melting. I don't even know how we have reached through the web to find each other and are now doing this. But, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest that isn't me. It's James Oliva.
Thank you very much. Oh, James, that was a wonderful intro. Very nice to meet you, James.
We've been corresponding just through, I think, like Instagram or whatever for a couple years now. But I'm happy to actually put this together. So I'll tell you that story. I saved this until we were recording.
I was waiting. Yeah,
this is fucking hilarious. I met my now wife a couple years ago. We were dating in the city. When we first found each other, of course, she and I both are of the internet age enough to know you have to do like background research. You got to make sure this person is who they say they are. They've got some kind of digital footprint and are indeed a real person. And she came across your page, but all she knew of me was my pictures from Bumble or whatever app we met on. And she was like, is this the same? It's the same name. He's like into audio stuff too. So there was like a day period where she thought I was you, which is even more meta than what was we started talking about the website. I found your page or you found my page and we were like, all right, who took the website?
Yeah. Jesus, man, I want to actually, I have our old stuff up here. So I just wanted to see like,
how it started.
Yeah. It was actually 2021, and you messaged me in that January. You were like, "Hey, this is super strange. My name is also James Oliva, and I'm also an audio engineer." Now, I'll be honest. Like every now and again, like especially when Facebook first started, I would get messages from other James Olivas for like no reason. They'd be like, "Hey, I'm James Oliva. You want to be a friend?" And I would always be like, no, what?
No,
like we literally only have our name in common. But I was just like, oh, hey, yeah, and you're in New York. And then it kind of spiraled from there. And then you kind of hit me with that story with that. And I was just so like, I was invested. I was like, oh, that's hilarious. Because there are some physical characteristics that are similar. We look like we could be like, related like
tangentially.
Or something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And we were working in a similar field and we're playing around with sound. And I think at the time, I don't even think you had this podcast yet. But
no, this was
you were
before
doing your
pod,
music, and which I listened to and I thought it was great.
Nice, thank you.
Oh yeah, no, that's no lie. It's not a James compliment to a James situation. But I dug it. But I found it very funny. I think what I tend to love about things that happen like that is that I don't tend to have a great perception of myself outside of my own body, or that I am perceived in some other way. So the fact that someone else could research you, find me, and then be all like, I don't know about this guy. Is this
the same person?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm going to cancel the date.
No, dude, she legit, there was she at least thought for a second that she might be getting catfished, but I proved my identity. But it was just hilarious.
That's hilarious. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, having the same name is one thing, but the fact that we are basically into the same types of creative things, creative exploration, and not just from what I remember of What's the Frequency, that was a trip.
Yeah,
it was I like unsettling art, and there were many moments as I was just letting it play through doing my workouts where I was like deeply unsettled. But I just think it's hilarious that we have this. Okay, here's the other question: Italian or Hispanic? Italian. So that is also in common. Yeah. This is sort of tangential, kind of related. I work in a very small unit of people, and there's a person in my unit at my job whose last name is Oliva, Italian, but we're not related. Like, we can't find any type of But
Have
I guess
you done 23andMe yet, or like any of those?
I think my mom has, but I don't think he would be the kind of person to do that. So. And I'm not necessarily going to ask him because it's just not appropriate.
Just steal one of his cups, or
that's right.
Like
there's plenty of DNA all over that place. Yeah, no question, plenty. But I guess here let's just kind of dig into this with a little bit of form and function. Why don't you tell my audience who you, James Oliva, are and what you do? And then I definitely want to get into, like, I'm really interested to know your particular process with art. And again, just the fact that we have the same name and independently of each other developed a very similar aesthetic. I love that. That's like the internet handing us a win right there.
I think that's the other piece of what I was going to say too, is that I think I immediately felt that there was a connection as far as just intuitively. Like, we hadn't even gotten very far into it, and I was already like, oh, I feel like there's a give and take here, or some sort of something that's simpatico or something like that about it. That I immediately took to. Yeah, we're already working on this sort of wavelength, which actually I like that better because it fits with my show. What was your question again? I'm so sorry. I have ADHD, by the way. I'm gonna take us on tangent. So I like the fact you're a long format show.
And I also, this show has gotten me a little bit better about not only conducting myself but helping to conduct others. So if you tear off, don't worry. We will find our way back there. Let's take it back to the real beginning. Let's just get an intro of who you are as an independent James Oliva. And then we'll go back. We'll go back to your childhood. We'll start from there.
I'm one of those people that sort of has this innate need to enter a space and create in that space. So, especially if I haven't been there before, I started out with art, being very, very much into film. Thinking I was super duper into film more than anything else. It was my little hyperfixation from the time I was 11 on. I was at the library, like, constantly, like, literally finding the Variety magazines and the Hollywood Reporters, and just reading them for, like, no reason. I'm just some, like, 12-year-old boy on Long Island, gobbling up information about what the studios are making and who's involved in the productions and stuff like that. And from there, I thought I wanted to be like an actor, and I started doing like theater. And then while I was in theater, I started writing a show, and that show kind of redirected me off of the acting path. And because there's always like a situation in which the environment that you're in, especially in a theater major sort of situation, where they start to classify you. So, you're the director type, and you're the leading man, and you're the comedic relief. Even
in school.
Yeah. No,
really.
There's definitely that, especially, you would think that wouldn't be the case necessarily in a college setting per se, but I think that's where it happens the most. There are these natural cliques that form, and these natural inclinations to put somebody in a box so that they know a path to follow and to follow through with. So, I got to write my first play, and my first play was, it was very different. I would never let another human soul read that play, mind you.
Just for me.
Yeah, no, at this point, because it got produced, like, it went on to win an award. It went on to get produced at the college, Suffolk Community College. Shout out to Suffolk Community College theater department. It was done as a full-length show. I got paid. I was a paid writer at like 20, 21, something like that. And I was a student at the time, so it was a weird experience. But it's a lot of success at 20 in a small space.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're Long Island famous all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, you're Long Island.
Well, but that's also not bullshit. That's bigger than like rural Florida famous. You're still in the proximity of New York, and it is more intense up there.
Yeah, and it just felt like a lot of pressure because I never really. I think it's different for people that have this purpose of, like, I'm going to do this, and they're so goal driven. Where I tend to, like, I know I have this art. I know I have this. I want to express my art. Sometimes I don't even know what form I want to do it in. I've always wanted to do photography and other art and other formats and blah, blah, blah. And here I was writing a play. Some of it was done out of spite because I had a teacher that was just like, sort of condescendingly egging me along to do it. Spite's
a great motivator. I love spite.
That'll work on me. And having someone who I deeply care about their opinion get invested in what I'm doing, so they might go like, "Hey, how far along in the script are you?" You want to
have something to show them.
Yeah, but I always lie. I'm always like, "Oh yeah," I'm like 20 pages deep, and they're like, "Oh, that's great, cool. Let me see the 20 pages." And I go, "Wait, okay, they're not. I do need to still proofread them. So, give me till tomorrow. I'll work on it tonight. I will write out a fucking 20 pages,
like Kermit at a typewriter, just like
exactly. Yeah, like, so yeah, I feel like this is a long way to say, like, I kind of have drifted into this role of being a writer when I always thought of myself as something more nebulous. And, I got asked to be, I wanted to do voice acting because I was like, I love acting, but I don't love the going out and auditioning, headshots, stuff like that. So, I started taking voice acting classes and stuff like that here in LA. And, a friend of mine, my best friend, somebody I grew up with my entire life, just basically made a podcast, a fiction podcast, so I can be in it. It's called Greater Boston. And he gave me, like, it's an ensemble thing, but, my character is one of the primary characters in the ensemble. And it kind of lit me up. And I started doing a lot more voice acting in podcasts.
Is this it?
That is it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All these links will be in the description, though.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So, I started doing that, and that started taking on a fan base, and I was writing screenplays, trying to get them into contests and stuff like that. And I was working on some very, like, sort of surreal type stuff. And I had a horror script that kind of, like, placed in, like, a couple of rounds in, and it never made it into, like, the final rounds on anything. And I liked some of the ideas I was working with there, and I really like a huge David Lynch fan. That tracks, yeah. So I really spent a lot of time, and I won't ever dissuade anybody and say, like, somebody might listen to my show and be like, "Oh, you're doing David Lynch in a way," and it's like, well, yeah, that's okay. I knew when I went in, I really thought a lot about what is it about David Lynch that fucks us up, that makes us, I could say fuck, yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
Fuck.
Yeah, fuck.
So yeah, what is it about David Lynch that makes us uncomfortable? What makes David Lynch so much more effectively upsetting than a guy getting his head split open on screen? And I really thought about how, like, he plays with space, he plays with these sort of uncomfortable, yet they're sort of funny moments, but they're not funny. They're out of context. They feel out of context. They feel like dream logic, and they feel out of place, even when they are a part of what's supposed to be going on. Like, have you ever seen Lost Highway?
Is that a movie?
Yeah, it's by David Lynch. Robert Blake plays sort of this, I want to say, like, a mysterious person who you don't quite know what he is, but he's mystical. That's him, the spooky white-faced dude. He scares the shit out of you in that movie, so horribly so. He's not doing anything. There's nothing graphic about his presence there. It's just an energy. And so I really thought about, like, how do you scare people using that energy? And I thought about, well, okay, we want to make a podcast. Podcasts are easy to make because you don't need any money, especially in the circles that I was in. You could do it and not pay anybody because no one was getting paid. There was no money in it. There was no advertisers. No one even knew what a fiction podcast or audio drama was, let alone there was any money in it to pay anybody. So people were just doing it to do it. And what I decided to do was that we were writing for sound. And I wrote it like a screenplay, but I focused in on, like, things like I remember distinctly after I turned it in, I had a first episode and I had some people read it. They were like, "Oh, hey, I don't understand. Why did you bother writing this? Like, he turns to her and says this, and my whole thing was like, well, the actors need to know what they're doing. The actors need to know the physical space.
Context. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, well, okay, Walter picks up a pencil and he puts the pencil down. Like, no one's going to know that. And I was like, well, why? And they're like, because, like, they don't know. Like, no one's in the space that I was in, a lot of people were used to the idea of narrating things that you couldn't get around. And my whole idea was like, no, we're going to tell the story through sound. So Walter picks up a pencil. That has a sound when it's in between your fingers. If he puts it back down on the desk, that makes a sound. He doesn't ever need to say, oh, here's a pencil, let me write with it. He can just go, oh, there it is. Picks it up, and then he drops it. You know he just wrote with a pencil. We don't need any exposition.
Narration, right, yeah.
Exactly. We don't need any... I feel like that always takes me out of the story. You have films that do that, let alone podcasts that do that, where they over-explain all of the action.
For me, it made it feel way too much like 1940s radio programming. Oh my God, she's walking to the door. Oh my, she's opening the door. Oh my gosh, there's an alien out there. He's abducted her. You know, it's like, it's just, I've never been into that either.
Or the found audio trope of where a guy is like recording and his friend is getting torn apart by a monster and he's describing every bit of it. You're like, put down the fucking recorder and run, or save your friend. Stop narrating.
Yeah, right.
You know, like how angry would you be if you're like not dead yet, but you see the guy like recording you and he's like, and he's tearing them apart. Oh my God, it's awful. And you know, the guy's just like, just save me or kill me or something. Just don't. There's a lot that I just wanted to play with, and we decided to not. I decided, when I say we, I guess I mean more me, because this was. I'm a collective of things, and that first season was all about sort of not letting any rules be dictated beforehand, and to allow for. Sort of innovation in certain ways, and sort of getting into a level of storytelling where, like, how film is told through moving pictures. You don't need dialogue even in a film to tell a story. Well, in a audio, is a similar situation. You should be able to tell or fill in the blanks of your story through audio, and that was the thing that attracted me to the medium and attracted me to doing the project. And we wanted to play with, have you ever played video games? Did you know Silent Hill?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I forgot which Silent Hill it was. I think it was 3, where they're like, the character, it was supposed to be an agoraphobic, and their home is becoming part of that world, of that ash world or whatever it is, and there's a portal in their wall that they can go through and takes them to Silent Hill or something like that. And I granted that example doesn't go a hell of a lot far in this case because I didn't play the game, but it fascinated me. It stuck with me forever because I loved the idea of agoraphobic who can't leave their home and their home becomes the danger. But the idea of a safe space becoming dangerous. When we put our headphones on or we're in our car and we're listening to a story on the radio, whether it's a horror story or whatever, we feel a sense of safety. And I really had to think about, how do I make you not feel safe? How do I elicit that out of you in a medium that doesn't lend itself very well, other than for somebody to uncomfortably describe the gore or something like that of what's happening? And so I came at it from a place of like, how do we invade your space outside of the podcast distance between you and your screen or whatever? And, I feel like in certain ways we did. We kind of helped mess with reality, and we mixed reality with the show. And there's elements, I don't want to give too much away for people who might be like, maybe I'll check it out. But there's elements that definitely bleed out from the events of the show. And so a long way to get to the fact of I'm now in this space, and I am this writer now, and I am this person who likes being involved in all the aspects of creating. I like directing, I like voice acting, I like, and I do all these things currently.
Yeah, I really at the time where I first became aware of you and I reached out, I was actually working for Audible as a subcontractor editing books. Now, I've edited and QC'd hundreds of Audible titles. I've also sound designed, like complete sound designed a bunch of them. I fucking hate when they narrate all the action. I fucking hate it. You don't need to do it. There's just some shit that if you want to retain the reality, it's just negative space. I especially when I was doing sound design stuff, like I hated getting books because you're limiting me. Now I can't. I would put a sound there that would imply that action, but you're fucking talking.
Yeah.
So now I can't put a sound there, and it's gonna fuck my whole flow up.
Or it's redundant.
Or right, it's they say the line and then there's a sound effect. It's like everything is occurring twice. And that's one of the things I really liked. And again, for the people who are listening, we're going to be referencing. I'm going to show this on here. What the frequency? And I remember at that point we had like a basement, and I binge shit. I in the same way with records, like I don't want to hear a song, I want to hear the fucking record. So I'll put the record on and let it play. And I had a basement and my studio was down there, and I was just doing my workout probably every day for a week, 10 days, just chipping away at the episodes. And it I guess it did remind, and like you saying David Lynch is a huge influence, like that makes sense, but I found it much more psychedelic. Like if there's like a David Lynch is like you said, like a dream state, or like dream logic. This was like acid logic. I don't know, and that's always been the art that I have like gravitated towards. So just the fact that we bump into each other, we're doing virtually the same fucking thing, and you make like a super sick. It's like this show is everything that Audible would never have let me. That's a show they never would have produced because it's too edgy. They need it to have, everything be narrated and just have it be cheese as shit.
Well, it's funny because when I at the height of my involvement in the community, I had gotten to the point of where people would want me on panels to talk and stuff like that. So I got to do a few like conventions, and I was talking on panels, and every now and again you'd get the Netflix executive who'd be waiting after the panel and introduce themselves, and they give you their card and you give them your card. But the whole time I'm thinking to myself, you don't even know what you took from me, and if you listen to it, you'll be like, okay, that's a no. But
hard pass.
But honestly, when they did, and this is funny because there are similarities between my show and this show, but I never listened to it, and I know that's like one of those like, oh sure, but no, I really didn't, because I really didn't want to listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of fiction podcasts going in. I kind of felt like I got the point. I'd known radio plays from when I was a kid. I'd listened to a lot of the old stuff.
Better to keep it untainted too. Yeah,
like I just didn't know. I knew I wasn't. I understood what the format should be. I didn't need anybody else really like to give me any more examples. Maybe I would have heard something that I'd go like, "Ooh, that's a good idea," but I just didn't feel like I needed it. So I stayed away from it on purpose. But after the fact, I came to the show called Archive 81, and that became a Netflix show.
I'm pretty sure we watched that. Archive 81 podcast. Is that how we can
Archive 81. It's a podcast, but it became a Netflix show. It was so freaking good.
Yeah, it was pretty solid.
I was over the moon because if a show like what gave me hope is if a show like that could make it onto the air, a show like mine has a shot, at least, maybe.
In the lexicon of streaming apps, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, I'll take a flyer on me for a season. I'll take it. Yeah. Like give me one season. I'll do a Netflix show. And I think the show, honestly, like if anybody's listened to the show, they would go like, okay, well, how does What's the Frequency work in that format? And I have ideas. But yeah, like what's so interesting? You brought up the sound stuff. Is that what did you want to be when you grew up? Like when you were a kid, what did you tell people when they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up, James?
So my thing was always music. When I was in like middle school and high school, I was playing in bands, writing music. As soon as my dad got a laptop that had GarageBand, I was recording. And then as soon as I started recording, I knew that I wanted to do audio. just because it was a free excuse for me to be around music. And honestly, too, like, I experimented with video. I was like super fortunate. My high school had a pretty advanced like video class where you could go learn how to use cameras, and like your
awesome.
projects were like making videos. And I've always loved video, but it's just not my bag. It's not that was never my wheelhouse. So audio was always the thing. And it, really, the only reason I even going to school and getting degrees and to do this shit is so I don't have to pay someone. That's it. I just wanted to be able to do this so that I could, because I understood from like the age of 12 or 13, like technology was going to be to my advantage in the future in terms of creation. And I have yet to be proven wrong. Every year it becomes easier to create super high quality content. And I just knew audio was my thing. And I also love creative projects. So I have a lot of friends who do video. I can't offer them assistance in the video, but when they come to their post mix, like come to me and we'll get that taken care of. I kind of saw the benefit of being a Renaissance person in any creative group, like kind of being understanding enough of the process, but also having like some valuable knowledge and skill sets that you provide. And that's it. Even this, like this whole show is just because I like talking to people. I was already doing it from in my own free time anyways. I might as well document it. Yeah. For, nuggets just like this. But that was really, like, that's how I have found myself now with the awesome. Video podcast.
For myself, I wanted to be a mad scientist.
Like legit in a lab cooking up crazy shit.
Yeah, and my reasoning was, and this is from when I was a little kid, and even up until like I got a little older, and I still was kind of like in my head, like, but I kind of still want to be a mad scientist. And my whole logic behind why is because mad scientists don't have a set of rules that they're following. There's no
anything is possible.
Anything is possible, and I love that. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that's why I loved it when, other than to say they don't have any rules. I don't know if I'd be able to eloquate it in some other way back then, but. It's something that has stuck with me, and I think about from time to time, was that little James kid, little James Oliva, saying how much he wanted to be a mad scientist. And the reason why I brought that up is because I eventually realized, and what I said earlier is that I thought I was a huge film buff and nerd when it came to film, and I kind of am. But I found that I have a bigger love for music and sound than I have ever had that connection with film, and I have, like I said, a strong connection with film. It's just stronger with music, and to admit that is even a bigger deal at some point.
Was there like a moment? Was there like a moment where a record you were listening to or something you were doing where you're like, oh shit, fuck video, audio is where my passions lie?
Oh, you know what? I think honestly, I think it was I really realized it maybe over the 2015 year where I was. My wife had asked me to, she was like, because I can get really like in that ADHD hyper-focus mode, and she was like, find me some good psychedelic music, like esoteric. That was my assignment, esoteric psychedelia. And so I had researched and had come up with all of these bands, anywhere from like older obscure bands, like from like the 60s era,
like legit psychedelic.
Yeah, and then even some of the psychedelia that still bled over into the 70s. Like there were some like into the prog rockish sort of sound.
Sure. Yeah.
And that also exposed me more to more prog rock, like Gentle Giant and a few others. I had already been on the Steely Dan bandwagon, but Can.
Well, who doesn't?
They're fucking amazing. But Can, I love. Vitamin C was like this insanely eye-opening song. And then I found a band called Goat. I don't know if you ever heard of Goat,
but I love that name. Are they metal?
No, they're psychedelia. But they're like pagan psychedelia. They're on the pagan end of things. Yeah. And then you have King Gizzard, right?
Right.
And they pump out
the
2
final
albums
boss.
a year.
Yeah.
Those guys, I again caught on to them like when they had their first album out, and I I don't think they had another one for like a 2-year span or something like that. And then they just started cranking them out like three a year from that point on. And I think I was listening to the album that has Rattlesnake on it when I was writing What's the Frequency, and I would just be sitting there, rattlesnake, 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 rattlesnake. And like, just jamming out, but it's that line over and over again with their guitar riffing and beat that took me over. I think it was that journey that made me go like, music is so important to me. Making mixed playlists and mixtapes back in the day, and
it's
like
a fucking lost art right there.
I know. Oh man, I used to have a player that had I guess because I always had it in the bathroom, the boombox in the bathroom with me when I was taking a shower, so I could listen to music.
Sure, yeah.
And I think the steam had done something to the player.
Definitely, yeah.
And it allowed me to scratch, I'm using air quotes, with the CD against the tape, so I can stutter it in a much cooler way when making my own little mixtapes and stuff like that. So I would be able to like in real time with the tape recording, like stutter the discs and just kind of sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say remix, but
kind of, yeah,
in a way, right?
Yeah.
So. And it was stuff like that, and I think about stuff like that, and I'm like, dude, you were in love, buddy. Like, to you, and especially for a lot of us, making a tape or CD, burning a CD for somebody, making
like a religious
nowadays,
experience.
It's a love letter to someone else.
Yeah.
It's like, I made this for you. This is for you. These are the things I think that are your tastes,
specifically chosen.
Yeah, there's something much more cooler than that, than somebody coming up to me and being like, hey, I have this movie you should watch. No, I have this band you should listen to, and then that just takes you away.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there was a particular moment for me, but I learned really early on that sound is king. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need a good video. Yeah, you need a good script. But if your sound is off, even if you have the best of all those things, doesn't mean shit. Mm-mm. Sound is what sells it. You wanna try and experiment. Just watch any of the scariest scenes from your favorite scary movie on mute.
Yeah,
it's not so scary. It's all the sounds and the music that really they drive the emotional intent of whatever that scene is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just convinced the same thing. Like, this is where the emotion is. I don't know how to describe it other than that. Like, the sound in whatever art you're being bathed in sound with. That is where the fucking shit is.
Yeah, and sound itself can be so cinematic, and therefore it could, because in and of itself you don't need film for it to conjure up an image in your head that is like film. It becomes a little bit more powerful than film, because it doesn't need to be filmed to make a film in your brain, and you can do that naturally just by listening to the song. But around like the 2015, I was doing audible narrations and stuff like that, and that's where I kind of started having to learn to use Audacity. Yeah, and that was my first experience, like audio editing, and then I started doing the ACX stuff. Sure. And I got hired to do like a couple of different narrations, but I noticed I was doing these like high-end quality, like, by the way, like, just a thing to anybody who's listening: if you're going to do anything on ACX, you're going to narrate a book, don't use the noise gate filter. It's awful. It makes you sound like you're tinny and hissy, and it always sounds terrible, and it never sounds good after the fact. Or there's people that I think use so much noise reduction that they turn their voice into like robot tinny. Well,
those are pretty destructive. If you're not using them right, those plugins can just fuck your whole sound up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear them all the time in auditions. Like when people send in auditions for any of the shows that I've been working on or something like that, and I'm trying to go through somebody, I will forgive them a little bit, but I will be like, you were told not to use any filters, nothing. But I can imagine somebody like who's doing a lot of audiobooks doesn't think about the settings they have set up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're just recording,
churning it out.
Yeah. But everything I had done with audio has been self-taught, like through Audacity. That's where it started, and I started with like using all their filters and stuff like that. But I was like seeing what I could do with them, like without knowing how they work or why they are, why they exist. Like, there's like the Paul Stretch, I think, or what is it, Paul something Stretch. And there's a few other ones that I just liked using, but I would use them and I would strip out sounds like from a very small section of sound, and then I would elongate that sound, and then I would put another filter on top of that, and then I'd cut another section out of that, stretch that out,
really manipulating it.
Yeah. It was about how far from the original sound can I get and make it sound like music, and give it this really strange ethereal sort of sound. And then once you start layering those all together, you do have music in a way. And I was sort of just kind of doing these things that I was like, I wanted to, do the same thing with certain other sound effects and stuff like that. So that applied to the show as well. So when I had the idea for the show, I had an idea of how I wanted the psychedelia to go. And so I had done a sample trailer for the guy who was going to do the sound design, because I can't do everything, James. I know every James Oliva wants to do all of the work.
We can't. We have this.
No.
This is why it took me a long time to understand the benefit of working on a team. That's why I prefer. It's a choice I make, because I'm the same way. I want to fucking do everything, but we can't. We have to. Can't do
well, I was burning myself out on the first season, because I'm the sole creative force behind it, in the sense that I'm deciding where the direction goes. I'm deciding what kind of side episodes we have, what marketing should look like, how we should promote all the little extra goodies that I can create for what is it, an Indiegogo campaign. And I even did an ARG type thing where I did a little digital postcard thing that I posted up on social medias that was like, hey, come find me at the convention, and if you find me and approach me, I'll give you a special treat. And it was like a season, I think it was it was a special like a one-off episode thing that I did. That was on a thumb drive.
Nice.
So if you came and found me, you got something completely unique, and that is not something that I've ever released anywhere else. So those are the things that, I wanted to play with and kind of do, but I was kind of doing this all on my own, and it was getting a little bit exhausting. Keeping all that together. So I had someone else working on the audio design, and I knew that was the right decision. And they now, what's great about that is that more so than me, he gets more work from my show than I've ever gotten from my show. He's now working as a sound designer on a bunch of different podcasts that do call for a certain amount of flair that would have been established on our show. But it came from a directive I gave him, because he was much more. He liked more of the diegetic sort of sounds. He wanted real world stuff, sort of stripped down, sort of stark, minimal. And I was like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're filling the room. We're layering in there's a window open somewhere, and I want to hear that window open. But I also want to hear
a fucking vibe.
Yeah, we're creating an environment, bud. And there's going to be a whole scene out there that if maybe they were able to strip away all the other voices, they might be able to hear a couple out there arguing. Yeah. And maybe we could hear at some point someone arguing through a wall, having it from their apartment. Let's do that. And those are the things that lit me up. And he was just like, all right, I guess. I don't know how to do that per se, but we're going to do it. And we did a lot of that for the show. We did a lot of well, how do we do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's figure it out. And that's kind of the fun of it, really.
It absolutely is. And again, that's, you kind of were talking about it before with film too. Film tells you what you're seeing. You have no choice. What is on the screen is what your input is. Audio leaves that ambiguous. Mm-hmm. And definitely with well-produced audio dramas that really create a whole little world that you enter. I don't know, you close your eyes and you get the image. I don't know if it's the same with video. You couldn't play a video in front of me and have me close my eyes and hear music. Or plug my ears and hear. I'm sure some people can, but by and large, there's just something about, for me, it was the intimacy of audio drama stuff. And, even radio shows. As a kid, I was aware of radio shows. I definitely my parents had a couple records of famous people who used to do radio shows like that. I would listen to them. don't know if it was ever like a real passion of mine, but definitely when I was doing it, that was my favorite part. I mean, honestly, definitely in the books that I did, dude, there was if you could go through and mute all the tracks, there's so many things going on. And I always found it funny too, like, there would be whole other stories, whole other situations going on. That remind me at the end of this, I need to send you, there's a sound design thing I did for the last record that we did that's just fucking hilarious. I love doing skits on the records, but you know, I even before I started getting into the heavy sound design stuff with Audible, it was just like, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious that I could, on my own, or, you know, me and a couple other voices, could put together this thing that would like make somebody laugh. A minute-long audio skit that you start playing and you're like, oh, what the fuck is this? I don't know. I'm also interested, I guess here too, is like, I'm also interested, like, what's for you, is this like a creative thing? Like, you have to do it. Like, you just can't, even if you sold all your shit tomorrow, like within another year, you'd be like creating, you'd have bought a bunch of it back, or like bought new stuff and started creating with it. Even from like, even as a kid, you were like that? Yeah. You know, I was thinking the other day, as early as even today, I was thinking about how like, I used to get really up in my head, and as much as I was socialized, I genuinely liked spending more time by myself, and I would play with, like, I always loved playing with my G.I. Joes. But I had these really intricate storylines with the Joes, like that when I put them away, I'd take them back out and I'd pick up where I left off. And like Dungeons and Dragons shit. Yes, I love Dungeons and Dragons, man. Like detailed stories and plot lines and stuff like that. But then I noticed, like, I'd found like a while back, I'd found like this little like ruled paper that I had written like a front and back, like a story about these two Joes that were hiding in the woods from Cobra. And I love how you just call them casually Joes. Joes, yeah, man, they're Joes. I love that, dude. Yeah, I'm a nerd, or geek, or whatever you want to call it. I was into it, man. Like, so I was writing like, but that's fan fiction. Like that is like literal fan fiction, and that's like over 30 years ago. You know, that was little James Oliva. I'm implicating you. Little James Oliva. I did similar shit, of course. But like, I didn't know what fan fiction was. I was just writing little stories about my Joes. I liked stuff like that. I found myself in my imagination engaged by TV and by film. I had an innate understanding of the literacy behind understanding the stories and understanding the maybe some of the other meanings, maybe not fully, because some of them are more adult, especially at the time. But I understood that not everything was super face value. And I was thinking about too, like, because I was listening to one of your other shows with one of your other guests and talking about things that may have influenced, and I was like, well, what influenced me? Just in case James asks me. First of all, meta things are things that immediately come to mind. I'm always interested in meta, but probably one of the earliest things that I ingested that was meta. I think because if you're a certain type of kid, there's certain avenues or maybe things that you didn't consider were possible in storytelling. And the second like a meta thing comes up, it kind of blows your mind a little bit, because you're like, what? I'm in the story now? What? How are you involving me? And I think that's one of the things that I get very attracted to. But like Never Ending Story. Like, right? Like, you know, you watch Never Ending Story, it's a kid reading a tale, and then at some point the book just goes, yeah, you Sebastian, or like not Sebastian, I don't remember his name. Sebastian, I think, is the dragon guy. Or the I don't remember what species he is. Anyway, we're gonna get lost in that now, aren't we? But you know, like, when the princess is now addressing the kid and they're like, no, we know about you, I was like, oh my god, the book knows about him. Like the idea that something it felt dangerous. Yeah. It felt scary. That scared me. And it's not like in the story, I mean, that's a scary movie, but it's not like the fact that it knows him
is presented in a scary way. Just the fact that it knows him and it's aware of him reading it. I was like, oh my God. It was a pivotal moment of my relationship and understanding art, is that how we engage with it and how we change it and how it changes us is a fascinating thing to explore. And that is definitely a theme that occurs in my show. There's a lot about the show sort of invading your space, which is what I was trying to do. I was trying to get it to leap out of the computer or your iPod or your phone or your stereo speaker and invade your space a little bit. Find a way to do that.
Yeah.
But also like how in ways in which the writer manipulates the characters to an end result that might not be what the character wants. Is this character a living being? Do I owe it something? Do I owe it, or is it at my complete whim? Can I make this character do anything, or are there rules to this? They have a set of boundaries that I shouldn't cross. Those are things that I like. I like exploring and thinking about, and at least leaving those characters to be sort of their own entities in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think the fucking Neverending Story is the closest thing we'll get to like our generation's, Odyssey. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's just I would be surprised to like that wouldn't be on somebody's list, especially that found their way into creative shit. But so David Lynch, Neverending Story. What else?
Let's see here. I wrote that. So I didn't stick to any particular media, but I did also because I was also a big comic book person when I was a kid. There are some people out here who will know this, and they'll know it from actually the TV show that came out recently, which She-Hulk, the She-Hulk TV series. But the comic book, I grew up on the one that came out in the 90s in her relaunch, and it had much more of a comedic flair to it, but it was very meta. The entire series took into account that there are comic books about her adventures that she can reference to and look up situations and be like, well, wait, what happened? And it actually is something she could use in court. But there was this moment when I was reading the comic book early on, and this is a very real thing as far as it being this formidable moment for me. I wish I was kidding. So there's a fight that's about to happen on a page, and before you turn the page, she's like, I don't want this, fuck this, I'm out of here. She goes through the panel, you open up the next page, it's an advertisement, but she's got it torn open. She walks across, she goes to the other side, she tears another hole, and she's on the other side, and she skipped the fight.
Wow.
And I was like, what? That is amazing.
You can't do that. Yeah, exactly.
I know. I was so happy. I was like, you could do anything. Like, you can do anything. And that was such a fun way to do it. Like, she should avoid the fight. But not only can she avoid the fight, but she can go through the comic book panel in the comic book, tear through the advertisement, tear through the other advertisement, and get to the other side, and she skips it. And they do that in the TV series. I hope I'm not going to ruin anything for you, but they do something very similar.
Spoilers are okay on this show.
She realizes, she's been talking to the audience a lot of it, like, doing the whole fourth wall breaks and stuff like that. But she goes so far as to, she goes into the Disney Plus menu and leaps out of her own show and goes into something else to go find Kevin Feige. And she's like now apparently in the real world trying to get to him, and I was like, I was hoping so badly that they made a reference to that moment, because that moment was so super important to me. And it sounds so like, I think somebody else could hear that and it sounds a little trivial, but I think what I'm getting at is that it really exemplifies what is possible. And what, when you sit down to write, when you sit down to create music, when you sit down to create a sound design, when you want to tell a story of any kind, there is no rule. Tell the story you want to tell, find the thing that you want to tell or do, and find a way to make that work. That is probably the most important part of the entire process, is if you have if you're in a situation of not compromising, especially if it's you that's making this thing and there's no boss, it's you, there's no excuse. Don't be afraid of it. Do it. Make it work. Yeah, that's my message to all the kids out there.
No, that's great, and it's definitely something I harp on this show too. Like, just fucking do it. Just start doing it, and do it the way you want it, and don't really worry about the views or what the perception of it is. Like, make something that you're happy with, just for the point of creating. I feel like that's like the one thing I'm very at peace with in my life, that I've lucked out to find a way to get shit out of here. Mm-hmm. Because it does me no good in here. In fact, it causes me problems when I don't let it out of there. Yeah. So, create for whatever cause, just for the sake of creation, even if you don't show anybody. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no rules to that. I mean, that's my main takeaway from any of this stuff that I've learned from any of the successes that I've had is that what I'm doing is what I want, and it just so happens to line up with maybe something that isn't as prevalently being done or being done in that way, which actually makes me think of immediately. My ADHD tells me, oh yeah, that reminds me of like how I'm not one of those people that believes in, like, I can tell you a story idea that I have, and you can go and say, I'm going to steal this. I know James hasn't written it yet. I'm going to write it. So, I'm going to steal from James Oliva. James Oliva is going to steal from James Oliva, and he's going to make his own story. And, I don't believe for a second that even though I told you my good idea, you could make the show or thing that I was going to make. We're not the same person. We're not going to get there the same way. We're not going to tell the same story. And because it's not even really your idea, you're probably going to change it from what I wanted anyway, and it's going to be yours now. And so outside of, like, literally taking something that I've written and putting your name on it, which would be weird, would that even be technically true?
Yeah, I was going to say, would that even be a crime? I don't know.
I don't know. I think I'd have to let that one slide. That would be weird. James Oliva.
I legitimately thought it was myself.
I saw my name on it. It was mine. I genuinely believe that. I used to have people that I'd be talking to in a restaurant. I'd be like, oh, I have this really great idea, and I'd be working on my pitch to them, and they'd be looking around. They'd be like,
aren't you worried? Yeah.
Like, maybe we'll talk about this after. Like, do you want to talk about this in the car? And I'd be like,
is this in LA though?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That actually, that is legitimate. That does make sense.
Sure, but I was always like, fuck them. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, and good luck taking my crazy ass idea and trying to make it work anyway. That's a genuine feeling. So I think that two people, just really need to stick to their creative integrity. I get that there are certain situations that, if you're working for a conglomerate, like say, and I'm only pulling this because it's the first thing that comes to mind. We were talking about Audible. Say like Audible's doing their own podcastings now. They're doing like the audio fiction stuff. And you're working for them. They are going to probably have a lot more creative control over what the end result is going to be, and you probably have no juice to stop them. And there's nothing wrong with giving in to that.
Yeah, of course. They're literally paying you to do what they want. So what? You're just going to do what they want.
Well, if they want what they want, they should just do it themselves now.
Well, they can't. That's the thing.
I know,
That's why they can't. They do have engineers, but they don't have enough audio. They literally don't have enough audio staff to keep up with they churn out books. It's crazy. I mean, you've done work with it. Like, you understand the pipeline there. It's like every day, thousands and thousands and thousands of titles. So
yeah. So if you're working for them and you've got to take a knee on something and do it, just don't kill yourself over that. But if you're an independent person and you're making your show, make your show. Don't let other people come in and be like, you can't do that. You probably can. Just, take the time to figure out a workaround. Maybe it's not literally the end result of what you had wanted. Like, you might have to compromise just because you don't have the abilities or the tools to do this
resources,
thing.
money, yeah.
Right. Maybe you can't do binaural, right? Like, you can't do binaural because you don't have all the equipment. But you can get close, and you can do a lot of it in post anyway. You can make a lot of things sound like you did binaural anyway. It's not going to be truly binaural, but you can get it there close. But that's just an example of what the types of things that you shouldn't let get in your way, really. And I think it's an important lesson to learn.
It really is. I've definitely come from the same DIY kind of ethos in terms of any of the music projects I've done or any creative thing I've done. It's always rogue shit. It's like rogue shit on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
Those are always, I honestly just find them to be the most fun because there's no fucking limitation. There are limitations, but necessity is the mother of invention. Mm-hmm. So you have those limitations, and that's when that's how I figured out how to record and do shit and make shit sound certain ways, was experimentation. I didn't have a Grammy-winning engineer who's going to tell me how to do this shit, so I'm going to have to try shit out and get this to work. That is half the fun. That's the exploration. But I guess my question there would be is there a particular part of the process, and this can even include administrative stuff, because there's certain elements of that kind of shit that I do enjoy too. Is there a certain, what are the points in the process from idea to release in whatever medium that aren't the creative part, where you still might need to be creative, but it's not like writing the thing, taking the idea out of your head and putting it down?
Yeah, I think, obviously it depends on what you're making, right? So if I'm going to take a podcast and say I have a new podcast idea and I want to make it, outside of the getting the script done and whatnot, I think organizing and coming up with a concept in and around what a workflow looks like for your team and how to produce that, deadlines, the auditioning process, even probably the one thing I like the most to do that has nothing to do with the creative process is the marketing aspect and coming up with ways in which to reach new ears. I liked going onto new spaces like Reddit. There are spaces that my show is known. There are certain circles, there are certain people, certain fans of this type of stuff. They just know my work. They know this show. But you go to another space that also has a very deep love for audio dramas and these types of things that I make. They do not know who the fuck I am. I could walk in there and I could be like, "Hey, I'm James Oliva," and they'll be like, "Yeah, okay." And I'll be like,
Sit down, buddy.
Yeah, I make what's the frequency? They're like, "What's the what? Get out of here. I want to know about the Bright Sessions and No Sleep Podcast and Night Vale. You could take your show and shove it up your ass, buddy." Or your show, any of those three? It's stuff like that. They're just a lot of times they're just people that are like, what are these shows? I could just list off a few shows to them and they could be like, I don't know, I kind of heard of that. The biggest show I've ever done is Greater Boston. Greater Boston has a deep fan base. You can go on Tumblr right now and find tons and tons of fan art on Tumblr for Greater Boston. Which, mind you, by the way, fan art is probably the highest form of flattery you could ever receive.
Dude, yeah.
It messes your head up. That, and also meeting fans that somehow have a parasocial relationship with you, and then they get nervous and weird around you. I've had that happen maybe a couple times at a convention where there's somebody who's just sort of this is more of a visual thing. And you're looking at them, you're like,
"Yep, I'm me."
And then they go, they run away, or they come up, they're like, "Oh my God, it's you!" And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's me."
Yep,
stop, relax.
Just me.
Yeah, that is a surreal moment, especially if you have trouble. Also, like I said in the beginning, perceiving yourself outside of yourself.
Sure.
So for somebody to come up to you and be like, "Oh my God, it's you!" It's like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Yeah, me. I live with that every day.
Here I am. I said I was going to be here. Here I am.
Yeah, just relax. It's okay. I'm not a big deal. Like I think I did say it to somebody. I was like, you're just relax. There's nothing big happening here. Like I'm not a big deal. We could talk. But I love the marketing aspect. I love that stuff with the ARG stuff where I came up with I paid an artist to do like this vector art background, and then I used like these mutated photos that I took of myself where like for a little while like I don't know, it must have been like 8 years ago now that they were doing the smile on the like you can take any photo and they'll add a smile to it, and so like it looks like you're smiling, but it always looked fucked up and weird, like scary, like it was like that's okay, I guess that's my smile. But I noticed that, so I was doing it to photos that it was breaking the filter. So it was like these weird sort of like jagged like things. So I did all these ones like that were really fucking weird and spooky. And I divided so one thing I did on my show is I'm technically split into three. As a human being, James Oliva, because of my show, I am divided up. So I have the writer, the creator, and the director. So I've given them all their own life. You can look me up on Twitter right now. There's the real James Oliva. There's James Oliva 76, and then there's the one and only James. Whatever.
You fucking got the real James Oliva. Damn, James Oliva Prime. Is that one of yours?
Yes, that's the other one.
This is fucking awesome, dude.
So there's 3 James Olivas. They all have their own Twitter accounts, and it relates to the show. And so, like on this postcard thing, I used a photo from each of these fucked up smile app things, and that was my representative. And you had to use those photos to find me. I love stuff like that. Or thinking about or looking at demographics and looking at how numbers change when you released this episode, or there was this type of thing that happened. And trying to make the correlations. I love stuff like that. It's like trying to solve a puzzle. And I love sales. I've always been good at it. So coming up with ways to engage and to do those things are things that I take enjoyment out of. And those are not. I mean, they're a little creative, but they're not considered
traditionally. They're more administrative. But I've always kind of made this argument too, is that even as an artist, like you're trying to, even with your art, no money in mind, you're trying to sell somebody on an idea that you had, to see if you can inspire an emotion similar or even a new emotion. So like there's this like innate ability that you have as an artist to be able to sell. I don't know. I experience a lot of my friends who do creative shit. They're the best salespeople. Mm-hmm. They could sell, what's the thing from Tommy Boy? They could sell ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves. But I those things are definitely valuable now in the age that we live in, and they're kind of a necessity if you want to be a modern day digital creator of anything. I find myself so disconnect. I when TikTok came around, I was like, I'm going to get involved in that. I think that's a great space for what's the frequency to reach into, and I think we could do some really weird, cool stuff, because I like looking at something that I don't fully know what. I starting up from a place of not knowing what the thing is really or how it works, and then sort of inventing my own engagement with it through, using it and going, okay, this is how it works. Now, it may not work that way, but this is how I'm going to use this thing. And through my misuse, creating some sort of unique quality to what I'm using that medium for, right? To some degree that I did that with the podcast. I didn't spend much time really thinking about how other people are really using the space. I just imagined how I wanted to use the space. And applied that to there and let that kind of exist a little bit in a vacuum. So, I wanted to go to TikTok and I wanted to do these cool things. I was like, oh, we're going to get so surreal. It's going to get creepy and weird. And, maybe I'll do some ARG things. And those kids are doing awesome stuff. I can't. They're already so far ahead of me as far as the ways that they're using that thing to creep people out or to do things that are
Like I saw this one where like they would take a viral video that's like cringy, like a cringy viral video, and it would start to distort until it was like someone else's face in the pixelized versions, and it would go and like their features are now grabbing the pixels from the image that are in the video, so you can see a face now, but it's still got the image of the other person in there.
That's amazing.
And I was like, all right, well, maybe we don't have any right to be here.
Yeah, right.
Like maybe, it's done. They won. They won already. I don't know what to do here now, because you guys are already so far ahead of me. And I think that's because you have a whole other generation of, I kind of fit closer into like maybe the older millennials. Though technically, birth year wise, I am a sort of, at the end of Gen X. But there's a lot about me that sort of relates more so closely to the older millennial crowd.
Sure.
But, you have a whole other generation Alpha and Z that are this is what they grew up with. Like you can give a 2-year-old an iPad right now, and they kind of know what to do with it already.
They can order groceries. Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know like how half this stuff works, and I'm not clueless. Like I'm not. I've actually gone through. I have discussions with other people around my own age range that I'm like that talk so disparagingly about the younger generations and stuff like that, because I'm at that age now where people are like, oh, those kids, they're so, and I'm like, you're lame. I'll be like, okay, uncle, okay, boomer.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's the thing about it is, and I have this interesting that's shortcut to me is not to turn these technologies and these advancements and these things and these trends and these apps to other them, to put them in this other category, and to somehow ignore them and not give them any credence. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe you don't need to be making TikToks, but you should probably engage with TikTok.
Yeah.
Whoever you are. Don't treat it like it's a passing fad, because that's silliness.
It's clearly here to stay.
Yeah, or things like it. So like when the
social
next thing
media,
comes out, when the next thing comes out, the next change, the next thing that builds off of, because I think TikTok built off of Vine, didn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
So like,
absolutely. And Instagram a little bit, but
yeah. So like TikTok, is an evolution between these two things that were very, very popular, and there's going to be something else after TikTok, and there's something about getting older and then sort of making yourself obsolete. And accepting the obsoleteness but being very obstinate about that and being like, no, I'm right. This shit shouldn't matter. And it's like, okay, when you get older, understand that time is now more valuable, and maybe we don't want to spend our time so much doing that. But also, like, relax. Like, that you don't have to. But at the same time, like, be aware. Understand how these technologies work, and as they change, I don't use, one thing I'm worried about for myself, I don't use ChatGPT. I don't use any AI. I should. I really should. I really need to get on that, because
you do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I'm worried about right now for myself.
Well, okay. So I've had. This is a very. I did not expect us to get here, but I love that. So I have a buddy who is like a computer programmer, like deep, and he loves AI, and he's always like telling me about the coolest, craziest shit that exists out there. And he and I even did an episode where he and I came up with a 1-minute-long commercial, and it was all produced with AI. So we fed it a sentence, it gave us ideas, we took those ideas, it wrote us scripts, we took the scripts, we had them generate pictures, then we went to another AI tool that turned the pictures into video, and then we assembled it all together, and that was like the premise of the episode. For nothing. And it was pretty good. I mean, for what we were trying to do, within 24 hours to have an idea to something that could be pitchable to somebody as like, a tester, a teaser, it was pretty valuable. But the reason... here's what I'm going to say. I have played around with it a lot. I find it to be incredibly useful for a number of things. The trick that everyone is going to have to get over is, where does this work best for me? And you're only going to find that by experimenting with it in your workflow. And then the second one is, what are the best prompts for me? That's going to be the thing. It's people will always need to steer AI. It won't be able to steer itself, and we're going to have to contribute to the data sets that these things learn from. But the real thing, it's not going to be understanding AI. It's not going to be having AI wax your balls. It's understanding how to ask ChatGPT or whatever AI you use. If you use Grammarly, there's another prime example for people who are doing a lot of copy editing. Grammarly is essential. It just makes your job it makes the work that you do much more accurate, and makes your whole job that much easier. For you, maybe assistance with writing script, maybe even as a utility to spitball ideas. I've got a buddy who does visual, like graphic design, and he'll just use the AI in Photoshop just to get ideas flowing. And then once his ideas are flowing, then it's all manual from there. But he just throws out some things just to see visually, just to get some spark going.
I wanted to use, because I wanted to play around with the concept of, because there's these other versions of James, that there would be this sort of facsimile essence to a version of myself or something like that. So I played around with this idea that because there are certain I wrote a lot of poetry or poems for, there's the voice in the show, right? The voice that breaks through the podcast, broadcast, or whatever you want to call it, within the context of the show. Those were all like written as poems, and then just done, recorded them. I wanted to go through ChatGPT and I wanted it to write me a poem, but I was playing around this concept of like feeding it a bunch of my stuff to then have it do an imitation of me. That's what I wanted. And it's funny. Nothing. It's very humbling to have an AI troll you. Basically, I fed it like 5 poems. I thought like, oh, that'll be enough, and it really wasn't. I probably should have fed it like a lot more.
Dozens, yeah.
Yeah, I only did like 5, and I was like, hey, write in my style, write something in my style. I didn't give it like a subject, just said write a poem in my style, and it was like this. It was like if somebody did a roast of me and then wanted to write a poem as that roast and be like, this is what James's poetry sounds like, and they start reading it off, and I'd be like, oh my god, I'm not that. No, that's not me. You're so emo. It was funny, and I was like, okay, I'm not using that. I clearly need to spend more time with you, and I'm like, I don't know if I have that time. And that was like a year and a half ago, and it's so much better now than it was then, and it's like I can feel it passing me by, and I'm getting that anxiety of like you're not going to know what you're doing. I don't even use Siri. I don't use Alexa.
No, I don't either. Fuck Siri and Alexa.
I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to talk.
Fuck that.
And I'm gonna be rude, and I don't want to be rude to the robots. I want to be friends with the robots. I don't want to call them, names. And
it almost certainly ensures your death upon the Terminator scenario. So
those videos of dudes kicking the robots to check their. I'm like, no,
the Boston
you're gonna
Dynamics.
Die.
Yeah,
you are gonna die.
That thing's gonna hold a grudge.
Oh yeah. They're not gonna forget that. They're gonna be like, oh, you're our friends. How about this right here? Do you remember this? But I didn't do it. That wasn't me. I was actually the one saying, fuck that guy. You should kill him. I'll drive you there.
And then you narrate it as you record it, like, "Oh my God, the robot's ripping his limbs off."
Exactly. Oh, it's disgusting. Too bad I can't put this down and stop anything. Yeah, like I feel like you know what it ruined me to like talking to any robot though. By the way, I'm totally game for it. Like I was of the mind the second, and I'm about to get political. Is it okay?
Go right ahead.
The second Trump was elected, I felt I said this. I was for real. So, and I was partly right. I was like, it's going to get very Mad Max up in here now. I was like, so why don't we just do this? Let's start cloning. Let's bring the dinosaurs back. Let's have AI become sentient. Let's bring on the zombies. I'm ready, but let's do it all at once. Let's just do it all at once. And people were like, ha, 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 ha. And I'm being serious. Like, let's just do it. Why? Like, we're already going down this destructive path anyway, like with the climate and everything like that, and just my disillusionment with like, I used to be one of those people that would be like, like everyone's decent, everyone's pretty decent in general. And like when we need to step up and do the right thing, we do it. We kind of do it, like we did it with affirmative action. We did it with desegregation, civil rights. Like when we had to, we did it. Like even if it was tough and there were people that didn't want it, there was resistance. And then 2016 happened, and I was like, maybe not. Maybe I had the wrong idea here, and I think it started like before that with like the Black Lives Matter movement, and like because that started like further back. That started like 2015 when you had like all those videos coming out, like which felt like every couple of weeks of some black person dying somewhere.
It's because it was every couple of weeks.
Yeah, like it was
didn't
coming
feel
out
like it.
And the one that struck me the hardest was I'm trying to remember his name correctly, but the gentleman who was like I can't breathe and
George Floyd.
Not George Floyd. Before George Floyd, it was
gotcha.
It was the kid who was selling Lucy's.
In New York, right?
Yeah. And
I can't remember his name.
The little short New York cop.
That was like old school, though. Yeah.
No, for no reason, like decided like he's going to try to take this guy down, who's not combative in any way, shape, or form, and he's
just
only
selling loose
anyway.
cigarettes. Yeah.
He felt threatened because the guy was so much bigger than him, I guess. But he kills him, and I was like, okay, well, you killed him, and you didn't have to. So this is a great example of a moment where we can set things right, and we didn't. And I was already like, wow. Maybe things are more fucked up than I thought. Like this is clearly a moment. We're living in a world where people have video cameras.
Eric Garner.
Eric Garner, thank you. Yes, Eric Garner. Yes. That was the biggest blow. There was already obviously a few before that. You had Trayvon Martin, and you had like a few other that year that had come through. But Eric Garner was the one that really stuck with me. I was just so like, this is clear. This is clear. We have the video. This is murder. There's no reason for it. And for it to be like, no, it was clean. It was clean. I was like, all right, there's a problem here. And then it became very cool to be like, or cool, but it became very like normalized to be like racist and upfront about it. Like where there used to be a shame involved at least.
They fucking ushered that in for sure.
Yeah, like it was. I was shocked. I was one of those people that was very like, I grew up on Long Island, and you would think that I would have encountered a lot of racism. But like I said, I was a little insular. Like I was socialized, and I liked seeing my friends, but I'd never seen anyone act like that around me. And I just genuinely thought most people were like me. They were like, we were in a post-racist society, James, but we weren't.
I thought so.
Yeah, and so like, and that was just it. So like, we had this situation with that, and I have a feeling all this conversation is probably going to get cut out in the end because it is so far from like
this is totally fair game, man.
All right.
These are the things. See, like almost every person I've been having on here recently, we've all kind of come to the conclusion that, especially our generation, we were an experiment with a lot of things. We were an experiment with technology. We were definitely an experiment with social media. And it's not a good experiment. Like it didn't pan out the way that we thought it would.
No.
But it's just the pros and cons, and we're the fucking experiment. What I don't think anyone is preparing themselves for mentally is like the real nihilistic, especially in the generations after us, the real nihilistic approach to no hope. There's so many traumatic experiences, like the generation before us, boomers, they had traumatic events, sure. JFK, I'm sure there's probably one in the 70s, 80s that was like super traumatic, just like on mass scale, like everyone's just hurting from this. We have them every fucking year. And they seem to be ramping up.
Yeah.
Especially around 2016. Your joke is funny. Bring back the dinosaurs. Just, let's fucking zombies, whatever. I had a similar thing, except for, and people would ask me who I was voting for, and I'd be like, I'm voting for the comet. Because that's what's going to take for this place to be cleansed. It's going to need a complete reset. You are right. Most people dealing one-on-one, most people are fine. Most people don't want their neighbor to suffer and die. That's most people. The problem is that the sycophants are in charge. So they're not most people. They're sycophants. And they almost enjoy lording over us in the way that they do. So, you know, I also am fully aware of like the propaganda infrastructure. So brainwashing anyone to pursue any certain kind of goal is like a foregone conclusion. Like the amount that another joke I have is we live in a prison of screens. Like where do we go to get away from the screens? I remember that. I know you remember that as a kid. There was a gap from the screens, and now I feel like everywhere we fucking go, we're just staring at a screen.
Yeah, it's funny because I you know, when I'm in a car on a drive with somebody else and I'm the passenger, I'm not on my phone. I don't really sit on my phone at all because I don't know, it feels wrong. And when I'm out, you know, whether it be like on a date or whether it be with friends, my phone isn't really ever out. I'm not on there checking anything. I might check the time, or I might see like a text. I might quickly respond to a text. But I think these are things in which that it's sort of splitting the difference between like not growing up with that type of interruption, because when I was a young kid up into my teens, or I should say early teens, because then by the time I was in my late teens we had beepers, like, you know, everyone was getting beepers. But you know, people love using this as an example, but I think we don't really give it credence to like just how real it is. It's like when somebody called, they probably weren't going to get you at home. And even if, you know, even if they didn't, no one was offended or upset because you weren't home
available.
Yeah, everyone was just kind of like, oh, well, James wasn't home.
He'll call me back.
Yeah, or like try to imagine a world where like, hey man, you want to go to the mall? Yeah, man. All right, I'll meet you there. And like, there's no like, hey, where are you? Or, you know, like you're literally just walking the mall trying to find your friend. And where you're meeting up, or maybe you got there at 2 different times, or, you know, like, oh, I'm going to the mall, come meet me up at like, I don't know, 2, and then like remembering to go down to like some place at 2 and like just hanging out in one area and having your friend find you. You know, it's a completely different, like, I don't know how we existed doing that. Like, I don't fully remember like how we didn't fuck that up, but or even directions, right? Like getting from one place to another.
Dude, that word fucking doomed on that one alone.
Printing out MapQuest. I can't go back.
Yeah, exactly. Like, printing out a fucking MapQuest and hoping to God there was no construction. Yeah.
Yeah. You needed a co-pilot for that. Yeah. Like you needed, or you're like that
Which
guy.
Which page are we on?
You know, yeah. And that's exactly the whole deal with that, is that there's something very there's a time where, you know, obviously every generation has this, where like there wasn't that element of technology that was available, and here we are. We have come so far, and we do definitely remember these, but we do also have the technology that we kind of grew up with, which was, you know, my generation got to grow up with like the console systems at home and the personal computers and the earlier stuff of that, and then, you know, obviously, you know, going from there, we're at this level of where we're at. You know, we have you know, cell phones and
touchscreen, everything.
Everything's connected. And it's sort of neat, you know. There's something that the earlier stuff had prepped us for, but there's some of this other stuff that's like, you know, the idea of Facebook at the time when it came out, for me, the age I was kind of like, what? So wait, I put myself somewhere and like people can like just message me, and like I'm like, I don't know if I want to be that available. I don't know if I want to be like that.
It's a valid concern.
Commitment. Yeah, I felt like a very sort of, it felt like a commitment, you know.
Yeah, this and you know, it is really funny now. It's like you have to have this digital component to your identity. Yeah, you know,
and that's what I was getting at too. Was saying that's the thing that you say, we'll use the boomers in this case, is that there's that rejection right up front. I'm not getting on social media, which we know they did it now, but they are all on Facebook.
They have a LinkedIn at least, yeah.
Yeah, but there's this element of like, I don't really use my phone. I don't really, you know, there was that whole joke about how people's parents didn't know how to use text or FaceTime and stuff like that, like where they'd be like this close to the screen, like, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah. Those sort of like, ageist jokes. But there was a rejection on their part too of like, why do I need this? And the answer was because this is where society has gone. And I think that's just something that I try to keep in mind as I think about or deal with the other culture, the younger generations, is that there's an importance to keeping connected in that way, so that you're not as much of a burden, I think, where you are so helpless in this modern world that you can't. If you're one of those people that were of a certain age, that's like, I'm not using a phone, so fuck it, and you don't have a cell phone, and you don't have a smartphone, you don't exist, which might be okay for you, which might be fine. That might be a purposeful thing, but try to interact with anybody else and they'll be like, oh, hey man, I'll hit you up on this. What are your socials at? And be like, I don't have them. What? All right. Well, I'll give you. What's your cell? Pull out your cell. I'll tell you my number. Oh, I don't have a cell phone. You have a landline. You have a typewriter? What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to write me calligraphy letters? What's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to use Morse code? Yeah, it's stuff like that. And I think that's sort of where I'm at. Like, I want to make sure that I do get into the AI stuff, but some of it's a little scary, but some of it's also
sure. But dude, like, I just did an episode yesterday about DARPA. I don't know if you're familiar with DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency.
No.
Anyways, they're like, that institution is the reason we have things like the internet. They're responsible for creating the first iterations of like these cutting edge technologies. This is just the gift and the curse. The benefit of being connected all the time is you're connected all the time. People can see where you are. It makes it much more difficult to abduct you if you've got your cell phone on you. Like, you're being tracked. The con is that you're always being tracked, and some of the apps that you have on your phone are selling your data. Like, this is just the ecosystem that we live in. I too have friends who are like, at 35, they're like, no, I'm not doing, fuck all, I'm going to be completely social media, inept, and I'm okay with that. And so for some people it works for them, but there's a ton of people that just create more problems for themselves because they're not adapting with the times. There's shit's happening so fast. AI is a good example, but like, the Chat GPT now, you can do context cues. A year ago you couldn't do that. So that new iteration might be better for you to, like, you put up a bunch of poems and then say, hey, based on the poems before, write me something else, and it will have a better understanding. Like, before, you would ask it a question, and as soon as you ask it that question, it has forgotten what you asked it.
Oh, yeah.
It gave you an answer, but it couldn't reference that answer on future questions.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge aspect of it, is to sort of keep you in the conversation as if there's an extended dialogue going on.
I would 100%, like, I'm a huge proponent of exploring AI. And just, again, like, from just the creative perspective alone, there's some aspect of your process that it could benefit you. The question is, like, how do I figure out which one of these things it's the most useful for me?
So basically what my expectation is that you will at some point direct me to where I should go and how I should pursue it. Because, dude, like, what program?
Look, I'm not even shitting you. That's why we made that episode. My buddy and I, like, he and I at that point were both kind of Luddites when it came to AI. So it was really kind of a learning experience for both of us. But we did that whole thing to kind of diagnose the process of, without knowing anything, how quickly or how simply can I take an idea out of my head and turn it into this much more fleshed out thing with doing like the minimum amount of work.
Yeah.
I don't know. Huge proponent.
Yeah. Like I said, I gotta get on it. I got to get on it because I think it's something that's going to be important to at least know how to operate or use. Even if I don't personally find it useful in my everyday life, there might be a time and a place that calls for it for work or for a particular scenario, and to be somebody who already kind of has that interaction and is ready to go at that. You're ready for the call, as one would say. I could take that call and be like, yeah, I got it. I'll work with that thing and I'll get it to do this and produce something for us.
Well, and especially, dude, with all the technologies, like, it wants to leave you behind. Mm-hmm. It sucks that a component of our existence is, like, keeping up with our software, operating system, and, you know, technology, just like the administration in every person's life that goes to maintaining all the passwords and being able to log into all your accounts. It's stupid. I fucking hate it. Mm-hmm. But I also, I just do it.
Yeah.
This
and
is like,
point, I mean,
this is the cost for existing here now.
Everyone's got our information anyway now. I mean, it's all been leaked.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we got to worry about anything with that regard.
Definitely not. Not this time. Well, you know, we're kind of reaching the end here. I do want to make sure we touch base on the other couple of links that we opened up. Can you tell me a little bit more about Fable and Folly, the network that you guys are on?
Yeah, Fable and Folly. It's a network that What's the Frequency is a part of. We helped be a part of its initial launch. We haven't had any new episodes in a long time. I do want to let anybody know that if they listen to the first season and they're like worried, like, oh my god, that you haven't put any episodes in a really long time. Yes, life happens, and that's its own podcast in of itself to talk about like how to overcome certain aspects in the way in which you let life get on you creatively. But there will be a season 2, but with Fable and Folly, they're a really great network. Their sole existence is to really kind of raise up and give a platform to all of these podcasts, find a way to monetize them in a very ethical way. So there's a lot of like the show works pretty hard. I'm sorry, that works really hard at getting these sort of deals to come through for us to do actual paid commercial spots, which help keep the podcast in general free or at least very cheap, and turns them into something that they just weren't viable that way before. So it's a podcast. It's a podcast network that was started with that mission in mind, which was to put the artist and the shows in the forefront, not to take this huge cut or to even take the shows away. So I could take my show off that network anytime. I don't owe them anything. I could just go. And there's no hard feelings. There's nothing where they were like, well, you owe us this, and this is your contract or something like that. And I think that's really kind of a nice thing to exist in this day and age. And then and I was able to kind of bring other shows in too. So we have like so many like excellent shows that are under that network at the moment. But
looked like a lot of cool stuff on there. A bunch of sci-fi and
Amelia Project is really great. Obviously, Greater Boston is great. There's another show that I do called The Landwell Murders, which I don't. I do voice acting in the second season. I'm one of the villains.
Love that.
Yeah, it was great because Jonathan approached me about doing, because I have a habit of doing something that basically happened to us, but much more overtly, where I'm like, I love your work, we're friends now, and I did that to Jonathan. And Jonathan is the writer and creator of Landwell Murders. He also did another show that I had fallen in love with before that, but he's very like his comedy lends itself very well to Mel Brooks, and
Love
it's
that.
Landwell Murders is like a historical fiction comedy show. So much of it is actually based in reality, which boggles my mind because there's so many absurd things that occur. But that's the reason, one of the things that attracts him to the stuff. But he approached me about doing the voice directing for the show, and he had both seasons ready to go. So during COVID, we did the audition process, cast 2 seasons, recorded them. Now we're in our 3rd season, which we just finished up the audition process. We're going to be picking a cast soon and getting into that.
Hell yeah.
And then there was another thing I was working on too. I just got hired to do voice direction for an animation project called Paradigm Shift Chinatown, which
is this it?
Yeah, it's like a anime like werewolf story thing. I'm kind of new to the project recently, but I'd seen like a 10-minute short that they did where I watched her turn into a werewolf and kind of go out at night. She's also a cop.
Werewolf cop, a werecop.
Yeah. And I'm going to be casting that soon. We're going to be doing a Kickstarter. So if by the time this comes out, people are looking to contribute at all, they just need to look up a Kickstarter and look up, Paradigm Shift Chinatown. It's going to be a great little project, and if it does well, then we get to do more, and then I get paid, and that's great. A little bit of self-interest involved there.
Yeah, well, there has to be some self-interest.
Yeah, we're just trying to make, look.
Can't be running it in negative all the time.
No one wants to be the starving artist. They just want to get out of starving and into just the artistry portion.
Well, you've already kind of experienced a little bit, but like, you don't need, not everybody, I personally have never wanted like mainstream success. Award shows, those things are not why I do art. Why I do art is because I have to fucking do it. And I've proven to myself just by putting out the music and things that I've done that somebody somewhere is going to dig it. Somebody somewhere that doesn't know me is going to listen to it and get something from it. So that is like the point in doing it. And the internet allows us now it's a niche. I'm just a huge proponent of the niche. Find your niche and just stick to the niche.
Yeah.
Most things do not need to get, even mainstream shit doesn't need to get mainstream. It really doesn't. It once it gets mainstream and the big money and big players move in, everything gets fucked up. It's just always better in a niche, and you don't need 100 million people to at least make the project pay for itself, or in some way justify it or incentivize you to do something else and keep doing it.
Yeah, I think, reaching an audience is probably the number one goal. And I think the end result that I look for personally is that I look for, I want to affect you somehow. Now, I'll be honest, I don't mind that if I've affected you in a negative way.
Yeah, me neither.
Honestly, because that's a visceral reaction. You had an experience, and you didn't like it. That's okay. That's fine, actually. But I want you to feel one or the other. Honestly, I hate it when somebody's just kind of like, "Hey, it was okay." That's the worst thing you could say. If you said I fucking hated it, man, it was awful. Awesome,
thank
you.
That's passion. Yeah,
that's passion. I made you feel that. And then it's the opposite of that. It's just it's my everything. I found so much inspiration in it. That is probably the most rewarding aspect. Anytime that you can spark someone else's creativity and give them a reason or an idea to follow that path, I think that's probably the one goal that about the whole thing that feels the most real to me. It feels the most satisfying is when somebody's like, I listened to the show, it gave me an idea, and I'm doing my own show now, and we're kind of letting your show influence us in this way, and this is what we sound like. And I actually had that happen recently where somebody was like, it really shaped what I heard it, and I felt like I could do something similar but in my own voice, and I got to get to be a voice on the show, but I didn't know other idea of their work. All I knew was that they were very complimentary of mine, and they were a fan, and that I listened to it recently, and I found inspiration in what their final product was with that. And I even got the chance to talk to them again and do a sit down like how we're doing, and I was telling them, I was like, there was just things in that I was like, yeah, I see where our influence was, but then you took it here, and now I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to take what you did, and I'm going to change that, and I'm going to utilize it in this way because I like where you took this idea from us and built on it. And I think there's something very, symbiotic about the whole process in which there's something sort of very, there's an ebb and a flow and a give and a take to it that makes it kind of rewarding, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're still doing it.
Yeah, we're all feeding each other.
We've been fucking doing this shit. And, really, drawing inspiration from other people drawing inspiration from you, that's the ultimate. Yeah. You're telling me something I made you want to make something? Yeah. That's the shit. That's what's up.
Being, finding mainstream popularity by happenstance is fine. It's not what I'm shooting for. I'm just, if I can reach more people and if more people are engaging with it and stuff like that, that's something I can say like I would love. But I mean, it's such an abstract concept of mainstream success, what that means, what that results from. And I think, at worst, it's maybe a mind fuck a little bit of just being like, trying to perceive what that even looks like. I think you're just better off not thinking about it. Maybe just continue making your art, no matter which level you reach, just kind of put your head down and go, okay.
Well, that's really kind of the point that I was trying to make earlier, is like, those things are cool if they come and all, but that's not why you do it. You do it because you have to fucking get it out of your head. You do it because you just have to put your hands to action, and whatever comes from it, whatever comes from it. Yeah. There's just like something, that's what makes humans unique. We can create shit. We can like have an abstract idea in our head, and from that abstract idea can come real tangible shit, big scale tangible shit that can influence, I don't know, influence and inspire. That's the whole point. Yeah. What an inspirational fucking ending. Yeah,
I think we did. And maybe you should put like a fart sound at the end.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I have an outro. that's just as dumb as the intro. Okay. That is funny that you got that, because not many people understand that that's what I'm going for. I'm going for like the 90s shock rock, like stupid Kiss FM, blah, 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 like that kind of shit.
That's exactly what it sounded like, and I loved that part because it stood in such stark contrast. And I think that's that's art, right? There's a commentary occurring there that maybe elsewise wouldn't necessarily somebody else would have done. Somebody else would have been like, "No, the tone of the show's different, so let's not go." I
want it to be a little more serious than that. Yeah, even the name of the show, Totally Legitimate Business. Like, it sounds like a scam. That's the whole joke. I'm just really happy that you got that, because it really upsets. I used to play it. I used to play the intro with the guest sitting here.
And the guests are probably like,
dude, I had some like older folks who were awesome guests, but they heard that intro and they're like, what the fuck have I just stepped into? Like, what have I done to myself? I would always preface it. I'd be like, look, you're going to hear this intro and it's going to sound like I am not serious, but I actually do have a serious conversation with you. So.
And the name of the show, it certainly feeds into that. It's like, no, this is legitimate. No.
It's completely, totally legitimate. Yeah.
It's legitimate.
In this back alley, in this unmarked van.
Can I have $10?
Yeah, right, exactly. 100%. But dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much for giving me almost 2 hours of your day to just kind of sit and like finally bridge the gap here. And then definitely, I don't know what the timelines on any of these projects are, but once these get closer to completion, like, please come back on and we can explode like the process,
Yeah, we can totally do that, and then we can derail and go into politics and probably piss off people. And
I love it.
I love it. Let's do
it. And here's the other thing too. It's just like I'm okay with hearing shit I don't like.
Yeah.
Right. I want to live in a world where there's shit that I don't want to hear, that I might have to hear. I want to live in that world.
Yeah. You have to take a little bit of your medicine. I get it.
And people, it's not that I think all people should do anything other than just remember the kind of, how do you want to be treated? If there's one thing I can leave the people with as we enter this next election cycle, just think, how would you like to be treated?
Yeah.
And treat other people like that. 10 times out of 10, you're going to have a better time.
Exactly. I endorse that message. I'm James Oliva, and I endorse that message.
This is two James Olivas saying this message, so it's twice as powerful.
It is. The combination of our voices, if they can like somehow harmonize and unify, they can create world peace.
Yeah, no, 100%. Or open a rift. There's one of those things is happening, and I'm for either one.
Destruction or the bringing of life, birthing of life it's one or the other. It's the alpha and the omega.
You gotta love that. It is the all. This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Thank you everybody for listening. I'm gonna have all of James's links in the description. Be sure to check them out, especially if you're fans of audio dramas. Really, really cool and interesting shit made by somebody who's out here just fucking creating, following their dreams, just like me, just like all of us should. That is all. We'll catch you on the next one. James, stay on after we're done.
Yeah.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. with your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
That's obnoxious.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.